What's up, guys? Josh Pate here, Steve Wiltfong there. It is the weekly Wiltfong recruiting whip around. Steve, we're going to lead with a headline this week I never in my lifetime thought I'd lead with. Steve Wiltfong, how do you think Deion Sanders is going to fare recruiting at Jackson State?
Well, he instantly becomes one of the more household names at the position in the profession, right? There's not a prospect that doesn't know who Deion Sanders is. And believe it or not, there are prospects that when they start their journey, they actually don't know the name of the head coach at Penn State, or they don't know Ryan Day's name, or it's wild, but it's true. Mario Cristobal, that's not a household name like Deion Sanders is. And so the excitement of getting a call from Deion Sanders is certainly going to be there for most prospects, and the opportunity to talk to someone who's obviously considered the best cornerback to ever play football. Those are little things that are going to move the needle. Now we'll see what it does when it's ultimately becomes decision time. And it'd be interesting if Deion could get young men on campus, because I bet he would be electric in that atmosphere as well, if he's courting kids and their families to be able to have them in his office at Jackson State and talk about potentially playing for him. So it's certainly a hire kind of similar to when Jim Harbaugh got the job at Michigan. He was instantly a household name in college football in that regard. And I think when people got a call from Coach Harbaugh, it was exciting. But this is now Deion Sanders, an NFL Hall of Famer. It's another level of that, and so we'll see where it goes. And I wrote on the Blue Board 24/7 Sports message board yesterday, Josh, I wouldn't be surprised if he landed one or two touted guys when all said and done. And then from there, the scrutiny will be on those young men's development on the next level.
Steve, like when you talk to people inside the recruiting industry, maybe even other head coaches, how do they believe he will fare in the recruiting game, which, as you and I both know, requires a ton of work and a ton of due diligence? And then secondly, just his overall personality style. Now, we're not going to throw around accusations, but for better or for worse, there are people out there, believe it or not, that would call Deion Sanders, quote unquote, me kind of guy. So how do they think all that translates to the role of a college football head coach?
Well, to answer your second question first, I think that he has a chance to be incredibly successful with the relationship building with these kids, because they want to talk to him. It's Deion Sanders, right? And so we've seen him be engaging, and he's on TV, and I've seen him at various camps and combines over the last 10 years. I mean, he has a magnetic personality to him when he wants to showcase that. So now going back to your first question, Ryan Day and those guys, they don't really miss a day on the trail. Like recruiting's so important to the great head coach recruiters in college football. We don't know how much time Deion's going to dedicate to recruiting yet, because he hasn't done it yet. It may be his numero priority every day, like Mario Cristobal has recruiting as high as anything on his board as he's built Oregon into the Pac-12 champs, and they're looking for more. We'll see how much now that how often can Deion be in the weeds and have that 5-minute conversation here, that 5-minute conversation there every day, or really it's more than just relationship building too, Josh. It's about making sure you're taking the right football players. So your evaluation, making sure that you're tight and in line with your player evaluations, and making sure your board is about taking the best potential player for your program, or the best fit for you schematically or culturally. It's one thing to just go out there and say, hey man, these guys are all good high school football players. We're going to recruit you. But at Alabama, they do a good job of saying, no, we're not going to take you. We're going to take you because you're the person that will maintain our championship caliber culture here. So it's not even just about relationship building and recruiting. I know that gets pointed to so often, but it's about making sure, hey, this is the best offensive line class we can get. These guys are X, Y, and Z at the position, and this is why we want them, and this is why we're all in on them. Not just, hey, man, this guy goes to such and such high school where they want a state title, and there's a lot of schools that like them, so we like them too. So we'll, a lot of question marks there, but certainly from a standpoint of, can Deion build a relationship and get a kid interested in Jackson State? I mean, hell yeah. I mean, his potential to do that is as good as any coach in college football of getting a kid interested in their school right now with just the name recognition and what he's done in football and how charming he can be.
A lot like Steve Wiltfong in a way, if you really think about it. So I'm sitting there watching Notre Dame Saturday, and I've watched them for 2 weeks now, and they just dismantled South Florida Saturday. And then you're watching Clemson play, and we're about to watch Alabama play. Eventually, sometime this year, I'm told we'll watch Ohio State play. So watching Notre Dame, you always do the comparative analysis deal. And Steve, they compare very favorably with a lot of position groups. They compare very favorably. And yet when you watch them, if you're like me, you see the built-in limiting factor being maybe a lack of elite talent at quarterback and then the lack of perimeter skill. And with that in mind, I see you guys talking about, for instance, Deion Colzie, 4-star receiver getting ready to commit later this week. And he's got Notre Dame in his finalists. So first, talk about the player here. What kind of chances the Irish have, and then we'll kind of dive into what impact it could have.
Well, Notre Dame's sitting on 24/7 Sports number 13 recruiting class going into Deion Colzie's decision. He's announcing this week, and he's the number 84 prospect overall in the 24/7 Sports composite. He's a number 13 receiver nationally at 24/7 Sports, and he is 6'4", 193 pounds. He's a guy that Notre Dame's coveted since they had him in camp 2 summers ago. Obviously, they didn't have him in camp this past summer, but he's one of the more explosive receivers in the country. He's a state qualifier high jumper. He's a 4.5 laser kid in the 40-yard dash at that size. Plays multiple positions for a small high school in Athens, Georgia, on the prep level. But Notre Dame's had a lot of success with guys like him. When you look at Miles Boykin and you look at Inquinemius St. Brown, that bigger, more physical receiver that does have some explosive traits on the perimeter, Notre Dame's always found a way to schematically scheme that guy into their offense and make him a difference maker. And they go on and get drafted. And I think receivers, the big need for Notre Dame as they try and round out this recruiting class. They have one of the better offensive line alls in the country, headlined by Blake Fisher and Rocco Spindler. I really think Lorenzo Styles is a receiver that they have committed from Pickerington, Ohio. Is going to bring something to their roster that they don't have right now at the position, which Notre Dame has guys that can run at wide out, like Braden Lindsey's going to be as fast as anyone in college football, but you need that smoothness to you. There's other dynamics to receiver play than speed, and I think Lorenzo Styles has a chance to be the package at that. And Notre Dame signed some guys last year at the position that are excited. And we've seen Jordan Jefferson get on the field a little bit this past year, and Jay Brunell is a guy that tested off the charts in camp at receiver last year, and then we'll see if Xavier Watts is I have some questions there with Xavier Watts' athleticism. I'm not saying he is or isn't athletic, but when you're coming from Omaha Burke and I don't have testing numbers on you, time will tell if you can be a difference maker at wide out at Notre Dame. But to add Colzie to that young group, I think would give Notre Dame a chance to get some draft picks out of that group down the road and get that receiver room back up to the level that we've seen it with Will Fuller and Boykin and the NFL guys that they've had under Brian Kelly to date.
Do you get the sense that, they look at maybe quarterbacks they have coming on deck after Ian Book, and they look at commitments potentially like Colzie? I mean, I got to think Brian Kelly is not blind. He looks around and he sees what works in the sport. Maybe he knows his limitations at the moment. They're very good in a sport where it takes being great to win a championship. Do you think, Steve, that they look at the guys maybe that they have, like you just said, already on campus, combined with the guys they have coming in the future, and say, there's coming a time where we can hit this button and we can take this offense to the next level? Maybe it's not next week, but next year, 2 years from now. Do you think maybe they believe they're going to be poised to take that next step?
Well, with Notre Dame, we're like you said at the beginning, we're kind of splitting hair. Like we believe that they're close, they're on the cusp, right? So we're just kind of critiquing where we think they could be a hair better. And I think quarterback is certainly. I don't know if they have the guy in the room right now that can win 14 games for them. They have guys like Ian Book's only lost 3 games as a starter, so he can win a lot of games. But is he the same talent level as the Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields and guys that we've seen in the college football playoff recently. A lot of those quarterbacks that are playing in those final 2 or 3 games are getting drafted incredibly high. The Kyler Murrays and Jalen Hurts of the world. Those are guys that are leading their programs into the playoff into the playoff picture. And so can Ian Book do for Notre Dame what Jake Fromm did for Georgia? Is Notre Dame as talented as that Georgia team that made it all the way to the title game and almost beat Alabama in what was a back and forth game? I think that's I don't know, Josh, but I do think that when I look at Notre Dame's quarterback room and the way they've recruited the position compared to some of their national peers, there's not they haven't landed many no-brainers at quarterback in a while. Drew Pine last year, and I believe it was the Clark kid the year before. I mean, those guys are good players. They were good players in high school, but they weren't like eye-popping talents. And there's more to quarterback play than just being able to rip it 60 yards and make all those throws. But it'd be nice. You want the guy that mentally can make all the checks, but also when the play breaks down, get you 40 yards with his legs, or third down, he moves the chains with his legs to keep drives going. That's how Ohio State beat Penn State last year. Justin Fields was one of the best players on the field. So many times on third down, he kept the chains moving by getting loose for the first down. And Tyler Buckner's committed to Notre Dame right now. He's played nothing but small school competition in the state of California. He got injured as a sophomore. Notre Dame took his commitment without him really playing any varsity football. It was a camp eval, and because he got hurt as a sophomore in the first game. Comes back as a monster junior season, but it was against the smallest level of ball in California. He's been up and down on the camp circuit this year, but he is talented. But I'm not looking at him and saying he's for sure going to hoist the next crystal ball at Notre Dame also. Because when you look at the way Notre Dame is recruited, we already talked about O-line. They're always going to have one of the best O-lines. Their tight end room is insane right now. Chris Tyree is one of the fastest players in college football. They add him to their backfield. Kyron Williams is emerging star. So really, can they get a hair more out of quarterback? Can they get more dynamic at wideout? We'll see if Deion Colsey's another piece to that puzzle.
World continues to turn, and Steve Wiltfong is here to talk about it all, and I'm here to guide you through that as well. Steve Wiltfong, the Wiltfong Weekly Recruiting Whip Around. Always a pleasure, sir. I'll see you next week.